Welcome to Stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw, and that would be your Chickasaw native, your Chickasaw Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we have got episode five time of the Welch dynasty. One of the greatest characters, Roy Welch, pretty much the head of the Welch dynasty. Not the first generation, but pretty much recognized as the head. Herb Welch, Lester Welch, the Fuller brothers, Buddy Fuller, and we've got wrestling's greatest historian, our buddy Tony Richards, as always, to join us. Tony, welcome to the show. And one thing we forgot to promote has been your newsletter, Wrestling Time Zone, which Mr. Brisco loves so much, which I'm going to love so much. Tell us a little bit about that before we get started.
Yeah, you bet. It's Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel. It's a Substack
Time Tunnel, I'm
newsletter.
sorry, not Time Zone.
Yeah, well, you can go to Substack and find it. Just search for Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel or search for my name. And I write a daily one every single day. It comes out, comes to your email, or you can read it there at the website at Substack. And I also do a weekly podcast. And if I could just promote my podcast for this week, it's kind of cool. So this week we're going to have the only photographer that was present for the Terry Funk Jack Briscoe title change in Miami, and he was backstage. He couldn't shoot ringside because they had television cameras there and they didn't want to flash because he had to use flash back in those days. And so he waited backstage and he was the first guy to see Terry come through the door, and he took the first pictures of Terry Funk as NWA champion. So Don DeLeon, he's going to be on the podcast this week, and we're going to talk about that night in Miami.
Tony, that's awesome, but can you get us the photographer for the Houston title change that somehow nobody ever filmed?
I don't know.
Somehow that got kabukied throughout all the wrestling history somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know, but we don't have any for that. I don't know.
Don't have any footage. Don't all the still photos you have is Jack getting awarded the belt. That's the only still photo. Thank goodness they allowed that.
Yeah, which was kind of unusual for when they saw the television
during
cameras,
that time, yeah.
Yeah, when they saw the television cameras there in Miami, they kind of thought, oh wait, if something special is going to happen here, because most of the time the titles changed hands in Tampa. But
Tampa or St. Petersburg, yes, and
yeah.
even Orlando because we owned a building in Orlando.
Right, right. But so Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel, check it out and come over and subscribe to my newsletter, and then the podcast every single week. And we go back 50 years in wrestling history. So this year we've been covering 1975 and all the territories. And soon we'll be flipping the calendar and we'll be talking about 1976. So
who do you do the podcast with?
Just myself and various guests.
Yeah.
So I have different historians on, or I have wrestlers on, or people that were involved. Jerry Oates has been on this year. He was in Kansas City territory during 1975. So Bobby Simmons has been on for Georgia, and it's different people who were involved in that territory or they were around back then, or a historian that's written a book about it or something.
Yeah.
And Tony, the three of us have that passion, that love for our business, but we have that passion for the history of our business.
Yeah.
What goes on nowadays will be history one day, and I hope people look back on it with the same admiration that we look back on our history. But speaking of our history, there's nobody more powerful and bigger family than the Welch dynasty of the Tennessee, Alabama, of the Southeast down there. So let's get back into the Welch family, man. Where do you want to start, Tony?
Well, this Friday, this podcast will come out on Thursday. Of course, in years in the future, that won't matter. But December 18th, this show will come out and premiere this Thursday. But Friday, December 19th, would have been Roy Welch's birthday. Wow. So happy birthday to Roy. Happy heavenly birthday to Roy. But you can just tell we're on episode 5 and wow. we're still got another decade to go talking about the Welch dynasty. So they were the most powerful and biggest geographic territory in the United States. And we're going to talk more about that today. We're going to talk about just how big their influence was and how much percentage of ownership they owned of wrestling in the United States.
One thing that impressed me, Tony, was the cards that they had. You had Billy Wicks, you had Yvonne Robert, who's the greatest draw, at least a lot of people think he is. I think he was in Canadian history, one of the greatest draws in wrestling history. You had Gorgeous George. I mean, you had some Freddie Blassie. You had all of the great stars
Mhm.
were wrestling regularly in this. I call it the Tennessee territory. It's more than Tennessee, but the Tennessee territory of the Welches.
Yeah, I had somebody contact me after last week's show, and they said, "Really, Memphis wasn't drawing, and they had Gorgeous George?" And I'm like, "Well, in 1959 or 1958, Gorgeous was on the downslide for his career. He wasn't the Gorgeous George of 1950 or 51, where he
How long
was
did his career last, Tony? Do you recall?
right up till the early 60s. He started doing getting his head shaved matches to get booked.
Well, he
Yeah,
did too, right? He did the one famous one in the Coliseum
mhm.
where he was way past his prime, had problems with alcoholism, and he did the one what that was somewhere different, right? That he
Yeah,
did that. What was the other one he did? That was a big money draw.
yeah, it was in the early 60s. But by the end of the television boom, by 1955, his career was starting to it had already apexed and it was on the downhill slide. So that's why that sounds a little dissonant in somebody's head when you say the matches weren't drawing and Gorgeous George was on top. That doesn't seem to match up, but he was on the downhill side of his career at
Because
the
when he
time.
was hot, they literally said, the claim was that he sold more TV sets than Milton Berle. I
You
mean,
bet.
they actually called him Georgie sets because he
Right.
sold so many TV sets. When he was hot, he was one of the greatest draws of all time.
Well, we talked about, I think in episode 2 or 3, we talked about when he was in Nashville and he wrestled Thez in Nashville and sold it out. And that's when Christine Jarrett got the Georgie pin for her daughter. I mean, he was at the hottest right then. But by the time you get on the other side of 55, the later 50s, his career is on the down by then.
Especially back in those days, you didn't see a lot of guys that age in the ring still.
Right, right, right. Well,
Was
it
his
would have been,
problem of not drawing anymore? Was it due to the booze? Mentally?
and the overexposure. I mean, I think it was a gimmick that had been broadcast on television, and so many people had seen it, and it was just like anything else that gets hot. It reaches a place where then it starts not to be hot
And
because
it got hot, and there were so many copycats during that time. I mean, George's Gorge Grant,
yeah.
was this other guy. There were so many gorgeous Georges out at the time. It was hard to figure out which one you were getting in the territory.
And you have those careers that I think this would be sort of what you could say about Gorgeous George. He had a shooting star career. It was just like woo and flamed out and then crashed. Right? It
He had
just
that perfect bell curve, didn't he? I mean, he
yeah.
was like this, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
the gorgeous George
Right.
bloomed like that, and all
I
of a
mean, he
sudden,
was the hottest of the hot, but then that came to an end.
Because when he came out, Capulla wrote the book about him. That's really a freaking good book that I'd recommend to anybody. John Capulla, I believe it was, wrote the book, and he was just George Wagner out of Beaumont, Texas. He was just a really tough guy. That's why Thez liked him. I mean,
Yeah,
he was a real tough
was
dude
it?
and
right,
a
I didn't
shooter.
know that.
Everything that you thought about these old school wrestlers, he was. He
right.
just came up with the idea of this gorgeous George gimmick somehow and set the world on fire, and I didn't have a follow up.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, in that late 50 time frame, is Dick Hutton didn't get over as the NWA champion because all the territories were starting to get television shows, and Dick Hutton and television were not a good match with each other.
No.
And so his NWA run wasn't as successful as they thought it would have been because he wasn't the kind of guy to have that personality for TV.
Yeah, Dick had zero personality, zero charisma, for
But
that
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 wasn't
time.
something that when Lou said this is the perfect guy for be my successor, he didn't figure that in.
No.
Right? He was just talking strictly as a wrestler.
Here you go, three-time NCAA champion, and perhaps should have been a four-time. Debatable with Vern Gagne
Yeah.
and a strange call that he got to decide who won the match in overtime. It went to a referee decision, John, and the referee at that time had sole authority on declaring a winner. I thought Vern was a little bit more aggressive than Dick, which was Dick's career. He was not an aggressive wrestler, but he awarded the match to Vern because for aggressiveness and cost Hutton his fourth NCAA title.
Yeah.
Well, that's awful. I see so many sports decided by referees' decisions. They just had one in a big rugby game this week. I just hate that. I think it should be decided between the two talents.
no,
Those guys are studs. They've worked their whole life. Whatever you got to do, and I don't care what that is. Go 2 minutes extra. Whatever you got to do.
But it's just interesting to think about how the business mentality, and we've talked about this a lot. We talked about it a lot in the Barnett series and all about how the business changed, and it was a paradigm shift. And in the 40s and up through the early 50s, wrestling was the thing. You had to wrestle, and Thez was the consummate wrestler. But when entertainment got injected into it for television, that was a whole different ballgame. If Dick would have been the champion in the 30s and 40s, he would have been a great champion. But because he didn't have the entertainment value after the big television boom, he seemed
little square box, round oval box at the time.
he seemed boring,
Yeah.
no matter how good of a worker or a wrestler that he was. And it's just unfortunate. I hate that for him. It's the timing.
I do
was
too,
just,
because Dick, I had the pleasure of meeting. Dick was an outstanding guy and just a super guy. And backstage, he's one of those guys backstage. He had that charisma, he had that personality. That's the reason the promoters jumped on his bandwagon. Because he was a popular guy backstage, So.
And he was a big guy.
oh
He's a
man,
big guy too, John. You find one too with $100 bill taped to his chest there,
Yeah.
somewhere.
yeah, because he always did the crowd come out of the crowd. If you can beat Dick for what, Jerry, 5 minutes or
Yeah, some
something,
3 minutes.
you got
$5.
$100. Yeah.
Yeah, they'd tape it to his chest.
But you can see in the progression of the NWA champions how the wrestling business was changing. So you had Hutton, who gave it back to Thez, then Thez gave it to O'Connor, and then O'Connor gave it to Buddy Rogers. You can see how the charismatic,
and TV, right?
yeah. I mean, Pat O'Connor was more charismatic than Lou, and Buddy Rogers was way more charismatic than Pat O'Connor, right? I mean, you could just see
wow, yeah.
you could see how the business, what was attractive in the business at the time.
Remember the greatest heel promo of all time when he beats O'Connor and he says to a better man it couldn't happen.
Yeah.
And back then you didn't say stuff like that. That was so far over the line that
Which made him great. I mean, that's what made Buddy great. I mean,
people couldn't believe it that the guy would be that arrogant because you just didn't say stuff like that. That's why I think it's one of the greatest heel promos of all time.
The Atomic Blonde. He was something else, man. I mean, you were going, and then in that time you were going from the nice family oriented 50s to the jet set 60s, and he was the ultimate, jet set guy. He was a avatar for fast living, and and when Buddy Rogers worked on television, it looked at the time to people watching like he was working 100 miles an hour. I mean, his high spots were not what they were used to seeing on TV, and Buddy would fly.
And it's interesting. Those rings were so hard; they weren't taking bumps like you take today. They were taking a lot of rolling bumps. But the way it looked like a shoot. I mean, it looked fantastic the way they were doing it.
Right. And by the way, that was what happened to Roy's hip. Is all the body slams he took in those rings in the 30s and the 40s finally caught up to him there in the late 50s, and it just wore his hip out, which he ended up walking with a cane and a walking stick. And,
I think John can attest to this. Back when especially when I was starting, and probably just a few when he was starting. You go to these towns, thinking, man, that's going to be a good match tonight. You go out, and first thing I used to do is go out and kind of jump in the ring. And
yes.
So you jump in the boom, and man, there's nothing there. And holy shit, no bump, and the hill will come. No bump tonight, kid. No bumps.
Oh no, he changed the whole match on the fly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
well, most of the people,
I always like being a heel going out first because Jerry, I do the same thing you do. I go all over the ring because I check for any boards that were sticking up.
Yeah, exactly.
I check out how hard the ring was. I check to see what the ropes were like. Because you never know till you get out there. Yeah. And when you feel that ring and that sucker doesn't move, it's like weird.
Well, that was I mean, most people think St. Louis was the perfect wrestling city, right? I mean, it had everything.
It was,
but when you talk to wrestlers, they're like, except for the ring. Like
that's the one thing that stands out. Any wrestler will tell you that ever had the opportunity to work for Sam and Kill Auditorium. That's the exact thing he'll say. Man, it was a great place, but that ring.
Yeah, which is an old, bigger boxing ring.
20-footer, man. There wasn't a lot of crisscrosses called back then.
Hey,
It's
Skandor
all
Agbar,
right.
Skandor Agbar used to always tell me Harley Race was the only one tough enough to bump in that killer arena.
Yeah, he was.
And I told Harley that right before he died, because he knew I was good friends with Ack, and Harley was sitting there, smoking a cigarette in his wheelchair, and he goes, "Well, look at me now." I go, "Well, shit, you're 100." Okay, no, it's not.
Well, I mean, but at the same time, it had such a reputation for high quality wrestling. The St. Louis was like, you really thought you saw a wrestling show if you went to St. Louis, but the performers were all talking about how hard the ring was, and we're not going to take as many bumps, but everybody always walked out being really, really excited and satisfied with the wrestling they got.
Now, in one of our previous episodes, you talked about Buddy Fuller being a welder. I always thought you was going to say, and Buddy changed the rings in Mississippi and Alabama.
He
It
did.
seemed like he did, so he made them more workable.
Yeah, and actually, and that was one of the ways he made money in Mobile was that out at the Loxley Ranch was he made rings for people, and he built rings for California and Tennessee,
Wow.
and he sold rings to everybody. Because
that's where they also invented the modern wrestling ring. We can add that to their list of
he invented the much better bumping ring. I mean, he designed it in such a way with the steel underneath or whatever it was that he did, and everybody wanted one, and they sounded good too. His rings.
And that was made for TV. Then basically, they were making
studio wrestling for television. It was perfect.
That's what hurt WWE the early 90s was apparently Dick Ebersol on NBC says, "Hey, the ring moves too much." Well, he had Yokozuna in it.
Yeah, no shit.
That's true. And so they made the ring so freaking stiff. When I got to WWE, I mean, it was like bumping on the interstate. Remember, Jerry? It was those rings were hard, they were concrete. They were so freaking stiff.
Yeah,
and then they would switch them, Tony. So you're starting to switch them because you couldn't do anything. I mean, we're trying to compete with WCW. We can't take bumps,
and we're getting guys hurt like crazy in those damn stuff.
That's right. And so we need to go out there. You didn't know which ring they had, so especially on a house show. So you'd have to get out there first and feel the ring to see which ring it was, because that significantly altered your match.
Absolutely.
Until they got them all switched and they got great rings. But man, it was when I got there in the mid-90s, it was brutal.
So something else about the Welch family that's pretty interesting that I was telling you guys about this week that I don't think a lot of people know is that for a while they had a rodeo. So they had a traveling rodeo business where the rodeo traveled around to towns. And evidently their dad, Big Ed Welch, started it in 1937. And so this rodeo had 30 cowboys, 80 heads of stock, trick rides, bullfighting. Yeah, there you go. There's the ad about it.
Wow.
And the
Welch brothers up there in the corner.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing about it, look at the sponsor. It's the American Legion. It's the same people that sponsor the wrestling matches.
Of course.
Yeah. And so there's a thing on the events list there called what does it say? Ribbon roping or something like that.
Yeah, ribbon roping.
So I didn't know what that was. And I grew up going to rodeos and horse shows my whole life. I didn't know what ribbon roping was. Well, evidently it's the cowboy has to rope the cow and has to tie it up, take the ribbon off his tail, and then get back in the saddle on his horse.
Wow.
Hey, they had wild cow milking on this.
Yeah.
Wild cow milking.
Wild cow milking.
Yeah, where do you think those cows came from? They came from Roy's Dairy Farm.
And they got a payoff too, I'm sure.
Roy's
cows got a payoff.
Probably better than the guys.
And they were using some of the same wrestling gimmicks, like any fan who could ride the rodeo bull for 10 seconds could win $100.
That had to be entertaining. I mean, I'm serious. That to get a bunch of drunk rednecks and to get them on a bull, that had to be fun to watch.
By golly, I'll go for the 100.
Oh yeah, and you get them on one of these big old bulls.
John, now you're seeing, John, why Ron Fuller was so successful in hockey. He brought all those old school promotion from rodeo and wrestling and the wrestling.
Oh, that might have been where they first said, "Hold my beer."
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Because I know a lot of cowboys in that audience probably looked at their girlfriend and said, "Here, hold my beer. I'll get that $100, honey." And he's on his butt after that, you know.
Believe me, that's where you end up
But
most of
how
the
great is
time.
that? You're at a rodeo and it's open season for a cowboy for somebody in the crowd to come get on a bull. So
Yeah.
you can't sit there in the crowd and talk noise about, oh, I could ride that bull, I could ride, because somebody will say, go get on it.
Yeah.
So here's the
And a
cool.
bunch of them probably tried. And you're like, this is great. You watch these cowboys, these rednecks get killed.
So this is a cool thing that happened this week. Is I talked to Ron Fuller this week. He didn't know that the Welch brothers had a rodeo,
Wow.
but he said, "Oh." He goes, "You know, when I was a kid, my dad, Buddy, and Lester Welch, they got a rodeo going down in Alabama out on the Loxley Ranch." He goes, "I bet that's where that came from because Lester was a partner in that other
Yeah.
rodeo." So
Wow.
that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So Roy is just Roy. Roy, I keep saying Roy. Roy is promoting everything. He's got a 1,000 head dairy farm, which is printing money. It certainly appears like he's got
Yep.
this territory that's bigger than anybody else in the world, as far as territorial, as big as it is, and as far as wrestlers. And yeah, you mentioned last week he had 10 different studio shows per week that
Hmm.
he's having to do 10 different TV shows he's doing in the 60s and 50s to promote this stuff. And he's got this rodeo that he's sitting there. I mean, this guy is like an ATM. He
Yeah.
prints money.
Right. And he's a tough guy, and he's full of resolve. And again, I there's no way that people these days could even relate to him carving out that territory in the middle of the Great Depression. I mean, you just can't relate to how much gut and courage that took to do those things. I mean, he just had a dream and a heart full of guts and resolve, and he just kept layering on things, you know, that made money and were enterprising. And I would have liked to have been around then to watch those guys. I bet it would have been a lot of fun to see those four brothers sit around and talk about what's the next thing we're going to do. You know,
Tony, it's really
Right.
interesting because Mr. Briscoe and I, and he probably more so than me, I got to ride with him a lot, but got to be around Vince McMahon a lot. And of course, Mr. Briscoe out horse traded him one time over Georgia Championship Wrestling, which
right?
Vince is still mad about to this day. But listening to guys like that, it's just different.
Mm.
They see things that we don't. You sit at a meeting and they're the ones that ask the question that is so simple that you sit there. You didn't think of it though. You sit there and think, I'm pissed off at myself that I didn't
Yeah.
think of that question because that's the logical question to ask. And Vince would sit there. I used to tell people when you talk to Vince, be ready because he's going to listen to every single word you say and he's not going to interrupt you. And when you're done, there's going to be very uncomfortable length of time before he responds. Now, don't hop back in. He's going to come back with something, and don't interrupt him. He's a very pensive guy, very much of a thinker. But
Hmm.
being around guys like that had to be the same. Being around guys like Roy Welch, those
Exactly.
guys are just different. They see things that most people don't.
Yeah, and Roy was more quiet than Vince. I mean, Roy did not like being on television. He didn't like being the figurehead promoter that guys would do that for the wrestling show. He didn't. He always had somebody for that. It was one of the reasons Nick was even a partner. Was he was the front guy. He was the voice guy. He was the loud guy. And Roy was the pensive, like you said, the pensive calculator. Of what's our next move going to
But
be, and
And I don't mean to cut you off, Tony. I'm sorry, but
oh, you're fine.
that also lends itself to like Vince back in the '80s. Nobody knew that he owned the company. It was very much similar to Roy Welch in that way. He had people in front. Later, it became apparent, it became necessary that he was the front guy. Roy never gets a lot of, I say never, doesn't get a lot of the credit because when he put Nick Gulas up, there's a problem you have with certain state commissions. You couldn't be a wrestler and you couldn't be a promoter at the same time. Roy didn't care about who got credit or who got anything. He just put the guy up and let him get the credit. He sat in the background. He's the puppet master, even though Nick Gulas was a great promoter in his own right. But he was the puppet master, and he didn't care about it. And that was a lot of reasons I think that Roy Welch has not gotten the credit that he deserves over the years.
I think too it's an interesting dichotomy that he's exactly the way you describe him. At the same time, he was very protective of the Welch name, and he knew the Welch name meant something. Like he he got a lot of joy out of that ad there. The Welch brothers present the rodeo, right? And
Right.
so he was always a guy who, where here's a good example. So in the later years, where Herb and Lester were still working, he wanted them over every time. Whereas in the 40s and the early 50s, they had no problem putting the people over, and they were building up their heels, and they were always getting the beat downs and all that. But in the late 50s and 60s, he wanted Herb to win. He wanted Lester to win. And if a Welch was in the match, they need to get their hand raised. That was his attitude. So
Really?
he was very, he changed his philosophy after they became more household names around here in this region. He thought, okay, well, if a Welch is in the main event, the Welch guy's got to get the win.
And that was because of what you think is because they became such a household name that they now had to be taken care of more so than they did.
Protected, I'd say, protect the name. Like
And probably they had so many outside businesses at the time too. They wanted to kind
Yeah.
of enhance that.
yeah, and he's probably thinking, well, Nick's the front guy and got the Welch or got the wrestling thing going. We're going to do this rodeo thing, and it's going to be a Welch production.
There you go.
Not Gulas Welch, but just Welch.
And when you have something like that, and you got Herb Welch in the ring on Thursday, you got a rodeo on Saturday. You don't want Herb losing on Thursday
Yeah.
when
Well,
you got your name Welch Rodeo on the
right, and I kind of knew that because Buddy Wayne, who used to promote for them when he was first starting out running spot shows, he had a young guy go over on Herb one night and got in trouble with Roy over it. Because he said, no, that don't work. If a Welch is in the ring, he's going to get his hand raised. And you beat Herb Welch on one of your spot shows like that. That's wrong.
whereas 15 years before, Welches don't win anything.
That's right. They get beat down until the end.
They're the ultimate baby face. They
Yep.
get beat up until the big blow off at the end when they win, and then all of a sudden the new villain comes in and beats them up until the blow off again.
But now they're more in the legendary status, right? They're moving up into this protected area where we got to protect our name. And Roy didn't like, and that was one of the things that you liked about flying under the radar too, is, it wasn't always out front, with stuff. And we're going to talk about a couple of things today that would apply to.
Well, so we're up to what year? 1960, is that right?
It's about 1960 when Sputnik and Billy Wicks had their big program in Memphis, and Memphis is starting to get on fire. And I want to say too, Memphis is probably, in my estimation, Memphis is the beginning of Roy and Nick's issues with each other, because Nick really never liked Memphis. And Memphis was all Roy's baby, and it was the apple of his eye. It was the big city in West Tennessee that he never had. And now when he's bought it, he even told people the Greek will never run Memphis. He's talking about Nick, right?
Nick, yeah.
And so Roy even opened up an office in Memphis. A lot of people don't know that. Like, he opened up an office for himself in Memphis at the King Cotton Hotel. So he had a wrestling office in Nashville. He had one in Dyersburg, and he had one in Memphis for a little while.
Wow.
And so the Nashville office, all these were in hotels, right? The Dyersburg office was on Court Street. The Memphis office was at the King Cotton Hotel. The Nashville office was in the Tulane Hotel. And what's funny about it is that, and we can talk about this a little bit today too, but it's the same hotel the Athletic Commission office was in. And it was on the same floor.
Now through our comments, and we love our comments, so keep leaving them. Did the Fullers Welches start the
That's a very difficult thing to put together. So they didn't, but they were very in with the politicians who did. And so it's almost like you've created this thing that is to your advantage at times, but it's also at your detriment at times. Like, okay, if you're going to play this game, you got to live by the rules of the game you made.
Yeah, but in some respects, also you're making the rules, right?
Well,
I mean,
here's how it worked for them. Okay, it worked for them as far as not allowing other people to come in and promote in their areas, right? Because the commission granted the licenses. So
Right.
being in good with the commission gave you the ability to be protected and make sure other promoters couldn't come in. The downside was that you were going to pay your tax, and they were going to make sure
Yeah.
you paid your
Yeah.
tax. And if you didn't pay your tax, you were going to get in trouble for it, even though they're your buddies.
but isn't
And
that just an economic trade-off, though? I mean, that is okay. When you start setting this up and you start backing it, you understand you're going to pay a tax, but that tax also is what you're paying the mafia to keep your competition out of the state. So
yeah, that's the positive. Yeah,
it's a very positive thing business wise because okay, it's going to cost me this, whatever that is, 10% or whatever it is they take. But because of that, we're going to be able to help control the commission. We're going to be the same floor with these guys. We backed them. We got 1,000 cow dairy farm there. We got rodeos all over the state. We got wrestling all over the place. 10 different studio shows a week. We're going to be able to control wrestling in Tennessee, and for that, I just got to pay a little tax. I mean, to me, if you're the CEO of that company, you're going, okay, done. That's pretty easy to agree to.
right. But you also have to realize they are regulatory authority, and if they catch you doing something, you have to live with that, right? That's
Okay, but Tony, in fairness, did they ever catch Roy Welch doing anything?
Yeah, and who made the rules?
yeah, they actually did, and that's what we're going to
Okay.
talk about that a little bit today. Here's one of the things, though, that was to their advantage. They convinced the commission that just anybody shouldn't be able to do a wrestling show. So if people are going to do a wrestling show, they need to be licensed. And if they're going to be licensed, they need to be able to at least pay a certain amount to be a real promoter and just not be a fly by night. So in the 50s, in the 60s, $100 was a lot of money. So if you wanted to run a spot show in Tennessee, you had to have a $100 license for every town you were going to run. That kept a lot of people out because they didn't have $100 seed money to run the show. You know what I mean? So that was like one of the little things that they influenced them on that kept competition out was instituting $100 for a spot show.
So what did Roy get caught on?
Well, there was a question about how much tax they were paying and whether or not that was accurate. And they actually didn't turn in any records of any shows from 58 to 59. And so the commission, so what happened was the commission got audited. So another regulatory authority came in to audit for the government, the state athletic commission, and they found that the books didn't add up because Goulis Welch had not turned in any of their gate receipts or records or filings for an entire year. And so they actually had, in a commission meeting, they actually had a proposal that Roy and Nick would lose their wrestling license. They produced the records though and paid the tax, and they went on. Now Buddy got into trouble in Memphis because they said he wasn't paying the appropriate tax.
Now, wasn't there a city tax also in Memphis?
Yeah,
on top of
right.
that? Yeah.
Yep. And then Buddy gave them a check for the tax that wasn't a good check. And they
wrote him a bad check. Wow.
He wrote the government a bad check?
Yes.
What the hell?
And so Buddy, here's a good example of how, yeah, they were in with them, but they also had to abide by them. So the commissioner then told Buddy he had so many days to make it right or something like that. And Buddy goes, I know you and my dad are really good friends. Like, can you help me out with this and this? And he goes, yeah, me and Roy, we're tight. We're good. But you got to pay this or you ain't promoting in Tennessee.
Wow.
And Buddy never promoted in Memphis after that again. As a matter of fact, they had a commission meeting that issued the license to Memphis to Nick and Roy, but Les Wolf and Buddy Fuller cannot be involved. No shape, no way, no how.
So did Buddy never pay him?
No.
How do you get away with not paying the government?
Now Nick and
because
Roy,
whatever it is, I want to know.
Nick and Roy, I would imagine Nick and Roy paid it, but Buddy didn't pay it. So that led to Buddy then leaving Memphis and going to Phoenix and buying Tucson and buying the Arizona territory, because right in the middle of this really hot period in Memphis, the commission started investigating and the tax wasn't there. And then they had the bad check, and then they had the commission meeting going, we can't allow this guy to keep promoting if he's not going to pay his tax.
And Buddy going to Arizona, that's their first venture outside the Southeast, right?
Yes. Yeah. So then Roy and Nick got a license to promote Memphis, and they brought in a guy who was with them the whole run, John Regas. And John Regas then became the front man on television as the promoter for Nick and Roy in Memphis, because Roy was not going to do that. He was not a television guy for interviews and laying down suspensions and all the things a on-screen commissioner does. Or on-screen promoter does. That's not what Roy didn't want to do any of that.
Now, are all these towns and cities running in conjunction with each other? Are they running separate, almost territories?
Which ones now?
Well, like Memphis, like Nashville, you go down to Alabama, you go down to Mississippi, go to East Tennessee, go to Knoxville, Chattanooga. You got so many different cities that are all running different studio shows, but they're also running their own wrestling. Are they running as part of one giant territory, or is it kind of a loose giant territory where you might share like the top talent or the top title holders, and then have a bunch of different guys from, just underneath your main event guys that will be separate and run their own angles in different towns?
So it's kind of more like that, where, I mean, this is a big time operation, and it's very hard to track down exactly what was going on. But I can run down for you the scope of the empire. Okay, so now they have office in Lafayette, Louisiana. And Bill Golden, who we're going to talk about here in a minute, that's Roy's son-in-law. He's running the Lafayette, Louisiana wrestling office, and they're running Opelousas and Morgan City on Monday, Baton Rouge on Tuesday, Alexandria on Wednesday, New Orleans on Thursday, and Lafayette on Friday. So that office in Louisiana has got a little loop of its own. But they're also using talent from Mobile, and they're also using talent from Nashville. So it's all rotating around, right? Mobile, Alabama, is running Pensacola on Sunday, Panama City, Jackson, Mississippi, Laurel, Mississippi, and Tallahassee, Florida on Monday. Now, for a little while, Mickey Barnes, who was the promoter in the Tri-Cities area of East Tennessee, he goes to Tallahassee to work with Layfield to promote Tallahassee. I think that's when Buddy built the building there in Tallahassee.
Right.
So that was part of the Welch empire until about 1970 or something like that. Then it goes over to the Florida office.
Right.
But they had it as part of the Welch empire there on Monday nights. Tuesday night was Mobile. Wednesday was Tallahassee. Wednesday was a spot show. Thursday was Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Friday was Dothan. And Saturday was Gulfport, Biloxi. So they've got a loop operating out of the Mobile. That was the Gulf Coast Wrestling.
And that's a great loop there, too. Short trips, everything.
Nashville is the behemoth, right? So Monday nights, they got Birmingham, Memphis, Greenville, Mississippi, Blytheville, Arkansas, and Corinth, Mississippi, all on Monday night. They got 5 house shows on Monday night.
Wow.
Tuesday, they got Nashville and Johnson City. Wednesday, they got Kingsport, Huntsville, Alabama, and Bowling Green, Kentucky. Thursday, they got Chattanooga, Tennessee, Jackson, Tennessee, Paducah, Kentucky, and Bristol, Tennessee. And then Friday, they got Knoxville, Florence, Alabama, and Tupelo, Mississippi. And then on Saturday,
their roster had to be in the 80s, 90s to service all those towns.
And then on Saturday, live television, Memphis, Nashville, Jackson, Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Paducah, Kentucky, Bowling Green, Huntsville, Birmingham, and Knoxville.
Tony, do you know how many shows total? I know we can add it all up, but I'm not good at adding.
It's 700 or something.
A year or?
Yeah, a year for all of what I just went through. Now, in 1965, they've got all of that, and Buddy owns half of Georgia. So he owns Georgia, which is running Augusta, Macon, Columbus, Savannah, Atlanta, Griffin, and Carrollton, and Buddy builds the building in Griffin for the wrestling. So they got all that plus half of Georgia. And then in 1966, Lester goes in and buys part of Florida. So they got all that plus part of Florida for the Welches.
which they had
It's a
given up,
massive.
which they had given up earlier because they didn't have the ability to run something that vast of a territory.
Yeah, if it had been a 5-year window just a little bit later, they would have had all of Florida. If it would have been 1949 to 1955, they'd have had Florida.
Which is going to be interesting because then what do you do? What happens to Eddie Graham? The big what ifs in history. What
Well,
happens?
he's close to Roy and them. I'm sure he
Yeah.
would have still been a guy figured in. I mean, because he comes from Chattanooga and he broke in with the Welches, so he probably becomes a partner in Florida just like before. I would think. Yeah. So their roster in 1960, I don't know what it was in 65, but it had to be growing. But in 1960, their roster was 83 wrestlers.
Wow. Well, that's a huge roster.
Yeah, that was in the newspaper.
And
They
you
had
told us
80.
before, I don't know if you have your notes in front of you. I don't want to put you on the spot, but how many wrestlers were in the world at the time?
Oh, shoot. I
A
forgot.
couple shows ago, you told us.
Yeah.
I was just thinking they have a big group of all the total professional wrestlers in the world.
Right.
Now I don't think Crockett's they were at 3 towns a night every night, and I don't think their roster was that big as the Welch's roster.
I mean,
Wow.
so cards are now expanding, right? So in the 40s you had maybe 2 matches on the card, and then in the 50s you had 3 or 4 matches, and now you've got 5 and 6 matches on the card. So, rather than sending 8 guys to a town, now you're sending 13 or 14 plus a referee. So we don't even know how many shows they ran because we don't have documentation. There's no telling how many little spot shows they were running with everything.
It's just an amazing thing to have that and then have the logistics of that reporting. I mean, you got to book finishes, you got to book creative, for all these different shows. You got to keep that with your television. I mean, that is a logistic nightmare to be able to have that many different shows all run into both couple things into one huge overriding territory, but also your individual territories where things get played out by themselves. I mean, that's really impressive.
Now that Tennessee territory that Roy originally established around Dyersburg, he's still running that, but those towns are starting to become monthly or spot show towns or whatever. Union City, Tennessee, which I didn't mention in the weekly loop, but they're still running in Union City, Tennessee. In the fiscal year for 1958, for Union City, Tennessee, their tax, which was I think it was 25% maybe of the gross after your city tax or whatever that was. You paid that on your gross amount that the show produced. So for the year in Union City in 1958, they paid $8,675 in tax. So if you multiply that by 25, that's how much money they were making in Union City. Wow. One town that's not on the regular loop. In 1959, they paid almost $9,000 in tax for the year for that town.
Well, they're drawing some business there.
In Union City. Now, let's look at Chattanooga. Good Lord. In Chattanooga, 1958. Now, these are fiscal years, so they go from June to July or July to June. They go from July to June. So from July 1958 to June 1959 for Chattanooga, they paid $77,452 in tax.
Wow.
But in 1959 and 1960 in Chattanooga, they paid $145,727 in tax. In tax.
Yeah.
On the gross.
So they're making some coin.
In Nashville, 1958 to 1959 fiscal year, they paid $79,403 for Nashville. And in 1959 and 1960, they paid $100,545 in tax.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not throwing shade at these guys, but that's what they paid in tax. That's what they reported.
Right. And no wrestling promoter in history ever over-reported.
Oh no, you
You're
didn't make a
kidding. You're
mistake by
kidding.
that's right by over reporting.
Yeah, now they might do it when they're just talking to whoever. Oh, yeah, we had a full house. They were hanging from the rafters, but they're not doing that with the commission.
Oh no, ticket sales are down.
They want to know the
So,
numbers.
how hot was Memphis? So from July 1958 to 59, when half of the year didn't draw, remember Buddy fired everybody in Christmas time, fired
Close
the
the
show.
shows down.
Yeah. Well, for that year, that fiscal year, which would have been half of the Sputnik Monroe Billy Wicks feud, and half of it didn't draw, they paid 66,618 in tax. The next year, 1959 to 1960, they paid $245,127 in tax.
A 3x increase.
Of course, they were running Rustwood Park, and 17,000 people were coming to the shows and things like that. But that's how much money they were
records,
making.
Are you seeing how much the talent was getting paid in any of those records?
No, I do have the commission records on what they were getting for licenses. What the talent and the promoters.
What was $20, $25 for license?
I don't know if it tells.
Back in, if you were a wrestler, you had to get a license for that. If you're a referee, if you're a manager, they had a separate contract for managers and wrestlers at the time.
Yeah, I'll look that up. I'll have that for you here while we.
Now, when down to the Jesse James diary, was there any payrolls in that or just towns?
Yeah, he had some in there. I can't remember what they were, but he had some numbers written down for the week that he was making. So on license fees, in 1959 to 1960, the commission made $27,000 in licenses for the state of Tennessee.
Okay.
Now, those numbers I gave you, those are all Tennessee towns. So they're making almost $2 million in the state of Tennessee in 1960. And that's not counting Kentucky and Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama. I mean, if you take the tax money and multiply it, yeah, if you take the tax money and multiply it, you get the gross number, right? Now, Tennessee is a little bit easy to figure because there weren't any other promoters but them, just little guys, So most of that money is Gulas Welch money. Now, there's some boxing in there too, just a little bit, but most of that's wrestling.
Compared to with boxing, with wrestling, outdrawing live crowds in Tennessee for wrestling and boxing.
No, boxing wasn't run anywhere near as frequent. I mean, they were running wrestling every night of the week in 2 or 3 towns.
3 times a night, yeah.
Yeah. So wrestling was just think of the tax.
Is the breadwinner of the athletic commission.
Roy is responsible directly for all of the commission jobs.
Yeah.
Because there's really nobody else that's paying enough tax to be able to pay a commission to stay in business.
Well, at one point, the commission was not being able to survive on what they were making from the tax money. So then the state government funded the commission. Like they gave them a budget from the state government allocation, right? I think they were over budget. I think they were negative like $700 one year, and they were in the red. And so the government of Tennessee, the state government, decided to start funding them and sending them money to operate. So they became really, really profitable at that point because now they're funded by the government, plus they got all the tax money coming in. Which, if you look at it that way, I mean, Gulas Welch is really funding the state government to a large degree because of all their tax money.
Yeah, and they're certainly funding almost the entirety of the commission.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, certainly they're the gravy of the commission.
What was the commission budget? Do you know?
I can find out. It's probably in these records. It's a bear to wade through all these commission meetings.
I'm just curious. They bring in $2 million approximately in fees and taxes, and the commission.
No, they didn't. I was talking. Gulas Welch was making the $2 million. The commission, their total for the fiscal year 58 and 59, their total fees were 360,000.
That's huge.
That's
But that doesn't include taxes, right?
well, then you add the wrestling fees on top of that, it'd been 375.
So their taxes were 375.
Yep, that's the amount of money, tax money that was coming into the commission was 375,000. And then the next year, when Memphis got hot and Nashville was still hot and Chattanooga was getting hot, it was 655,000 plus wrestling fees of 27. So almost $700,000 was coming in tax money in licenses and fees and show gross taxes. Almost 700 grand. So you can't say all that money was coming from Gulish Welch, but a large percentage of it was. So you take 700,000, which is 25% of what they paid. So, gosh, that's almost $3 million in gross
From what they grossed.
for one state.
Right.
And now remember, they own all the state of Alabama too, which we don't have record for. They own the whole state of Mississippi except for a little stretch. They're pretty much the only promoters in Kentucky.
And Louisiana too, right?
Yeah, and Southeast Missouri, and Louisiana. Now on the wrestling roster, they're sending guys to all these spot shows. So they got all these town promoters. So if Buddy Wayne says, "Hey, I'm running a show in Rabbit Ridge, Kentucky tomorrow night," then they got to come up with 8 guys that can go to Rabbit Ridge, Kentucky, plus that schedule that I just named. You know what I mean? Buddy Wayne or Jerry Jarrett or Don Pruitt or any of these guys are out there hustling to get spot shows and work with the athletics of the high school to do a show. That ain't on their regular deal here that I was talking about. So, Jerry Jarrett says, "Hey, I got a show in Glasgow, Kentucky. Who can you give me for the show?" So they got guys on the roster to do all of that. Plus, they're sending guys to West Virginia and they're sending guys to North Georgia. And, Chattanooga's right there on the border. So their television is going over into North Georgia. So there's towns up there that go, "Hey, I got a show in blank, blank, Georgia." Well, send me 7 guys and a referee. So they got they are they're probably the biggest booking office in wrestling at this time. Booking
I don't see how
talent.
they wouldn't be, right? I mean, because you've got so many different shows, and I mean, all this. Again, the logistics has to be a nightmare because you got to have a local booker. You got to work with a local group, whoever that is, whether it's the athletic department or whether it's the fire department or whatever it is, if it's a charity event or whatever it might be. But that's tough to book events. You look at promoters now, like look at like Independence now. They'll run 2 or 3 shows maybe a month, and they're very very busy, and justify they really are very busy. These guys are running that a night.
Yeah, they used to send out. I've got some of that somewhere around here for when I was doing the Funk book. But like Nick Roberts would get something from the Amarillo office that had the television show number. So it'd be like show 705 ran this week, and here's who won, and here's who lost, and make sure this guy looks good at your show. Like, they had to communicate with the local promoter because they were essentially booking. And the guys were coming up with their own matches and finishes, and they're like, "We just got to make sure this guy goes over, right, or whatever." And I think maybe Crockett would be the next biggest, maybe at that time, because they're running, like Jerry said, 2 or 3 shows a night. Plus, they're doing that spot show thing too, where they're sending people to high schools and different places, and so they got to have talent on hand for those shows.
What an interesting dynamic change, in wrestling. Now it's gotten so big, and thankfully so, because these guys and girls are making a freaking ton of money. But back then, I mean, you're literally running high school gyms, but you're running a lot of high school gyms. I mean, you're
Right.
working every single night, and a lot of times you can work double shots on the weekend. I mean, the schedule's just absolutely insane. It's just a dynamic shift.
And every late summer, every county fair in the world wants a wrestling show.
Yeah.
And those county fairs are everywhere, and they're several a week in these different places. I mean, I know when I was growing up, that was a big deal. Like, hey, we're going to have wrestling at the
Yeah.
county fair, you know.
Tony,
So
I got to tell you this: when I was with Crockett, sometimes in the summertime, that's when they really do the outdoor high school shows, the football stadiums, and all that stuff. And most of the talent wanted to be on those spot show football towns more than they wanted to be in Asheville or Columbus because you got paid more, and they were freaky type shows where they just come in once a year or twice a year in the summertime, and we'd sell out to those high school football stadiums. Granted 1,200 people maybe, but there were 1,200 people paying tickets for them, and
yeah,
so
yeah,
you enjoyed working those high school spot shows. So I know they were drawing because I was there.
well, and another thing you just brought up, you know, that's almost $700,000 in the fiscal year of 59 to 60, and tickets were a dollar 50, you know, dollar
Yeah.
50, 50 cents for kids.
So
I mean,
there's a lot of people there.
that's a lot of people. That's a
Yeah,
lot of people going to see wrestling.
right.
Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Um, talk a little bit about Jack Welch. We talked about him a little bit, how he's the lesser known Welch, and the fact is uh, got more into the promotion side, and he was the promoter for Huntsville for a while. In 1967, he went on further down into Alabama to work down there with Layfield. And this is the first time really that Nick gets some of his family involved. His brother Gus Goulas took over the town of Huntsville, and he had been a restaurateur. Nick Goulas's family were big into the restaurant business, and Gus Goulas had a very popular restaurant there in Nashville. And he got out there in the late 60s and became a local town promoter for the company. And so he ran the Huntsville market.
And one of the few pictures that's around of Jack Welch, I believe, right?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Not a lot of people have ever seen Jack Welch, but there he is.
Look at those old woolly tights there, man. Those woolly tights looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
No elbow pads, no knee pads.
Yeah.
No.
Those tights, they weighed about 10 pounds when you took them off after a hot summer night.
And there was a more extended family involved. Jack's daughter, Joan, she wrestled for a while as Joan Phillips, Joanne Phillips, and JoJo Phillips. She had 3 different names, and she didn't really wrestle for that long. But that's another family member.
Hey Jerry, and you talk about it, there they are in the ring. No knee pads, no elbow pads, no wrist tape, no nothing. Those old wool tights.
But cowboy hats.
Cowboy
of course,
hats,
they got the cowboy hats.
Yeah, and Lester is the flashy one with the fringe jacket.
Lester always flashy.
So Herb by this time is slowing down his in-ring. And I found a newspaper when he had that car accident in 1946. The newspaper article mentioned his 600-acre farm in Dyersburg. So Herb also had a big farm, and he started slowing down there, and he started training guys. So he kind of started becoming the talent trainer there for Goulas Welch. And so they would go out to Herb's farm, and he would charge them $300 to train them for 6 months. And Herb's sons, Doyle and Bobby, started wrestling some during the 60s. Not anything really notable. Bobby actually got out of the ring and started running towns. And Bobby Welch ran Owensboro, Kentucky for the company for a little while. But the list of guys that Herb trained is really, really long. Some of them were Dr. D, David Schultz, all the Bass brothers, Ron, Don, and Roy Bass. Roy Bass was an interesting fellow. I actually saw Roy Bass wrestle several times. And because of the lakes area, of the big Kentucky Lake and the big Lake Barkley that we have here, he was Roy Big Mouth Bass.
I love it.
What a great name.
And he was a heel.
Tony, did you write this Herb Welch's book, or was this from Herb?
No, David Schultz published. David Schultz, who got trained by Herb, he published that. That was something they found after Herb passed away.
Yeah.
And
it's a great, really great. If you can find it, where can you find it? I guess on
Amazon. On Amazon. Yeah.
It's really a fascinating book. Shows a lot of the holds and how to apply the holds and stuff like that.
Those are all Herb's shoot holes.
Yeah.
And his little notes and be, I won a lot of championships with
Yeah.
this one, you know.
Yeah, I love those little side notes. Yeah.
One of the things, I mean, you talk about hazing guys and breaking them in. One of the things Herb would do, he would rub poop under his arms and then hold them in a headlock for a long, 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 long time. And
I remember they used to put that bomb on their
everything you
legs.
can imagine
Yeah.
to dissuade guys from coming back. You know, wow, he came back. Wow, he came back again. He was 67 years old when he trained David Schultz.
67.
Wow.
Holy cow.
Yep. And so 67-year-old Herb Welch used to beat him up every single day. And
Tremendous.
stretch him to the point that his wife had to come out and help him get out of the car when he got home.
Wow.
She
And
would
then
help.
they go soak in the bathtub for
Yep.
And Schultz was a tough guy.
Oh, very tough.
Ask John Stossel.
Yeah.
I met him in St. Louis when Jerry and I were there at the Herb Simmons Hall of Fame, and David was there, and I'm like, hello, Mr. Schultz. It's good to meet you. I'm like, would you consider being on my podcast? He goes, well, I don't do email. Write me a letter. I'll think about it. I'm like, okay.
Write me a letter.
He lives out in the middle of nowhere. Like David Schultz has always been a guy who's protected his family from the wrestling business. And he, I don't know, he's Mr. Kayfabe to the end.
You think?
Which
There's a guy named John Stossel that would agree with you.
When you think about that situation of him slapping John Stossel, that's going back to his roots where Herb Welch
just
told
takes you
him.
back 50 years ago. Right?
Herb Welch told him that don't ever forget to kayfabe everybody. Every man, woman, and child in this business depends on kayfabe. And the secrets of this business have to be protected at all costs.
Tony, do you know that Mr. Brisco there, along with his brother, pretty much witnessed the entire altercation and had to go to the ring and not know if John Stossel had been killed or not?
Yeah. So what happened there, Jerry?
I just remember the calamity going on outside. We're getting ready, we're warming up, and Vince comes in and says, kind of, like a little locker room speech, which he never does, by the way, as John could testify.
That's true.
Never comes in the locker room.
He doesn't do that. That's right. He doesn't do that.
And somebody's got to take care of this guy. Somebody's got to read him as right. And we're all look, and there's David over in the corner, all hyped up and everything. Ding, ding, ding. Briscoe's, you go to the ring. So we missed everything.
But did you see him? He was down.
We saw him. We walked out right after the slap, and he was down on the ground, and all the cameramen was like a huddle around him.
So did you hear the commotion like when he slapped him? Did you know something had happened?
We just heard like an echo, John. I mean, it was like
the
boom,
slap.
You could hear it. Well, those little hallways at MSG. They're small hallways, and
yeah,
you could hear everything in those hallways there. So you heard some commotion going on, but we just figured it was. We didn't know what the hell was going on.
So when you walked out, Stossel's on the ground, right?
Stossel's on the ground, laying on the ground, and we see Schultz and Jack kind of chuckles when he sees that. We kept on walking.
So you had to go to the ring. Like
we had to go to the ring.
But you knew right away what had happened.
Well, we figured what had happened. We didn't see anything, but we figured that Schultz got to him because of the instructions when Vince came in the locker room.
So when you came back from the ring, did you like immediately go to see if there was like
we immediately went over. We immediately went over to Schultz and shook his hand, if I recall right.
So I just believe with every fiber of my being, when Vince McMahon said somebody ought to do something about that guy, David Schultz goes, well, what would Herb have done?
Yeah.
And that's what he did.
That's what he did.
Because, I mean, Herb is the guy that broke him in and told him all these things, And in 1984, kayfabe wasn't out there.
So what did Stossel say when he shook his hand?
I don't know. I
No,
was
no, no. When
there.
you shook his hand, and told him, "Hey, thank you for doing that," what did Stossel
Oh,
say? Not
one
Stossel.
saw
I'm sorry, not Stossel.
Schultz.
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 He just looked up and grinned at us and just shook his, nodded his head like, you're welcome type. He didn't really
Yeah, he
say
just thought
nothing.
he thought that was business as usual.
He thought he'd done the right thing, which he did do the right thing. The way Stossel, worded the question and was aggressive and sticking the mic up there. I mean, I probably would have done the same thing.
Well, Hulk
What?
Hogan choked the guy out on television. I mean,
Belzer or whatever it is.
yeah.
And
I
got
What
mean,
did the boys say afterwards, Jerry?
everybody was cheering Dave. I mean, Dave was a hero for a week, until the lawsuit started coming out. Everybody was arms length for him.
we don't know that guy. We've
I
never
don't
seen
know
that
him.
guy.
He didn't say nothing to me. I don't know.
So, do you know what happened with Stossel? I mean, Stossel he gets the shit knocked out of him. He gets knocked down. Does Stossel just like get up and leave? But you guys were in the ring. But did you hear what happened?
I think he stayed and interviewed a couple more people.
You're kidding me.
No, I think he stayed and done, and I'm not sure because, like you said, I was in the ring going. We were going 20 minutes with Murdoch and Adonis, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, it just another example of the Welch's influence about protecting the business.
So John Stossel hates the Welches.
Well, if he wants to know where that came from, that's
It came from Herb Welch.
Herb Welch.
So he needs to
Let's get it out there now. John Stossel came from Herb Welch.
I mean,
he
when
needs
he
to call Ron and Rob Fuller and say, "Guys, listen, your ancestors did me wrong here. This is
so I mean, ask Wayne Ferris, the honky tonk man. Herb Welch trained him. Larry Latham, the referee manager in the South, Danny Davis.
Good guy too.
Not the WWF guy, but the Danny Davis that was the guy in Roy and Nick's territory.
the OVW Danny Davis, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
Wonderful guy.
Yeah.
That kind of
great trainer too. You got that from Herb.
Yeah.
Coco Ware was trained by Herb. Yeah. So, what are you going to say, John?
No, it's just interesting about who guys were trained by. We're going to talk about Jerry Jarrett here in a minute, trained by Seller Moran, that surprised me because he was a reputation as being like a Hiro Matsuda or a Billy Rob. That was a tough way to break in the business.
Yeah.
Same with Honky Tonk Man. He broke in a really old school, tough way. And people that want to bash honky tonk, which certainly not one of them, will say, "Oh, he was all shake, rattle, and roll." It wasn't, but he got broke into the old school tough way.
People that say that didn't see him before Honky Tonk Man.
Correct.
I mean, when Larry Latham and Wayne Ferris were a tag team in Tennessee, they were fantastic. Yeah. They were awesome, and they were serious, and they were big time heels, and they were a great tag team. Blonde Bombers.
Wayne will tell you, I talked him into leaving Florida because he was getting beat every night, and I just saw some talent into him. And Wayne will tell you, I went to him and said, "Hey, you need to get out of here while you still got a name to you." He had some talent. He wasn't shake, rattle, and roll at the time.
We could do that show sometime. And have all our guests would be guys that trained by Herb Welch.
That'd be awesome.
Wayne and Coco and Danny Davis and so. Herb made kayfabe very, very clear. I mean, that was the thing. We got this cash cow, and it is putting a lot of money in a lot of people's pockets, and it has to be protected. And the most important thing is nobody could ever know that the matches are predetermined, or baby faces and heels can't ride together, and you can't expose the business in any way at all.
And Tony, I agree with that. I do agree with that. I don't think you need to throw it in people's face, even to this day. I don't think you should. Larry Hagman used to wear his hat through the airports because he wanted people to see him as J.R. Ewing.
Yeah.
People know he wasn't J.R. Ewing. He was Larry Hagman, but that was part of the character and part of the thing. But the business has been exposed at this point for over half a century. Mm-hmm. It's exposed all the time. That doesn't mean to expose it just to do it, but it has been exposed. I mean, I've been shocked looking at some of these really old, from Farmer Burns and Yusuf Ismail and so many of these old guys, how much the business had been exposed. It was exposed more than it was not exposed.
All right. Yeah.
Well, one of the guys we're getting ready to talk about, Jack Pfeffer, he was the king of exposes.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And that's another example of how seriously the people who worked for the Welch company took it because, all right, to set this up, Jackie Fargo and Don Fargo came in. Well, actually, Jackie had come in the early 50s as Wildman Fargo, but, it wasn't very significant. When the Fargo brothers came in 1957, we talked about that, the 18 sellouts in Nashville and about how big they were in Mobile, Alabama, and all that. Well, Jackie, yeah, there they are, the three
Wow,
Fargo
Fargo brothers.
brothers. Jackie, and we talked about Jack Pfeffer went to the Fargo brothers and told them he wanted to be their manager and it wasn't going to cost him anything. Well, Pfeffer got his money from the promoters directly. Like the boys didn't pay him, the promoters paid him, and they paid him a percentage of what Fargo and them were producing. And so Pfeffer comes in after Jackie turns babyface in 1961. He becomes the biggest babyface in the territory. So he's like a huge draw. He's the centerpiece, and he's starting to become the legend, Jackie Fargo. So Pfeffer wants more money because Jackie's drawing more money. And so he comes in to meet with Nick and Roy and Christine Jarrett about Jackie Fargo's booking fees and about the amount of money he's getting. And he wants his envelope to be fatter and bigger. And so they're not going to pay Jack what he wants. And it turns out to be an argument. And Jack then gets to the point, he goes, well, here's how I've dealt with this in the past. Here's how I dealt with the Jim Londos situation. I went into the newspapers and told them about how the business was fake. And I'm
Wow.
gonna expose the business in Tennessee if you don't pay me. There he is.
That's Jack
There he
Pfeffer.
is. Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. He talked in broken English.
Yes, he did.
And he threatened them. He said, I'm going to expose the business if you don't give me what I want. This pissed off Christine Jarrett. And I don't know exactly what happened. I've heard everything from she got him with the grip in the neck and held him against the wall to it was just a verbal exchange.
And Pfeffer wasn't a big guy either, by the way.
But
No.
she said, there he is. Yep, Jack Pfeffer. But she says something along the lines of, this is how I feed my family. And this is how we all make our money. This is how we have homes and buy groceries and you're threatening all of that by doing this. And if you think about even exposing our business, I'm going to kill you.
This is Christine Jarrett. Good
Yep.
for you, Christine.
Christine Jarrett, I'm going to kill you. Now,
Damn you, Double J. Come on here and answer for your grandmother.
Yeah.
Now, we know this happened because Jack Pfeffer wrote it down. He made a note of it.
You can barely see this, but this is the note itself. And there at the bottom, you talk about where she threatens to kill. Now, you can barely see the writing. I couldn't do anything about that because of the way the ink was, the picture and everything. But that is the actual note that Tony Richards got for us from Christine Jarrett, where they talk about threatening to kill Jack Pfeffer.
And my friend Greg Klein sent that to me because he went to the Notre Dame where the Jack Pfeffer stuff is all.
But you know what, Tony?
That's another bucket list for John and I.
Oh, yeah. What a piece of shit, though. I mean, you don't get what you want, so I'm going to ruin everybody's living. I'm going to set a lawsuit up, and I'm going to expose the whole business.
Yep.
And the thing about it, John, he had a track record of doing that, and for them to even involved in there. But he's down with that Tennessee mafia, man. That it's a little bit different.
Those hillbillies you'll disappear.
Yeah. Oh, and let me tell you something. Hillbillies hold a grudge better than anybody. and so on that note there, he says it's February 1967, and he says I had a meeting about Fargo. And Roy and Nick and Christine were there, and he says Christine Jarrett threatened to kill me. He wrote it. He wrote it like he talks. Threatened. She threatened. She threatened.
And that is all in the note. You just can barely see the writing because it's so faint.
She threatened to kill me.
So his spelling was phonic spelling. This is just like mine.
So, and here's another interesting dilemma that I don't know the answer to. So there's all kinds of stories about what happened after that, but the most common story I was able to uncover was that Pfeffer decides to get back at Nick and Roy a different way, and he goes to Alabama and talks to Lee Fields, which is Roy's nephew, who's running Gulf Coast, out of the Mobile office, and he gets Lee Fields to come and run in Nashville against Roy and Nick.
His own blood.
And he ran for 6 weeks in Nashville, and the first 3 weeks didn't draw that well, but the second 3 weeks, week 4, 5, and 6, he sold out and started making money. And guess what? The Fargo situation got that fixed. And Pfeffer got whatever it was he was looking for, or they came to a number or something.
And this is the sweet lady here,
That's
Double
her.
J's grandmother, that threatened Jack
Yep.
Pfeffer.
That's Teeny.
That's who he was all scared of.
Yeah.
She got him by the neck, some people say. I don't know. I wasn't there. But Jack wrote down she threatened to kill him, and I've always heard she threatened to kill him.
She threatened to kill him.
Yep, that's right. And he got Lee Fields to come to Nashville and run 6 weeks.
Seriously, you just have no balls when you have to say, this sweet little lady threatened to kill me. I'm not coming back. I mean, what kind of, you're just not a man when you admit that.
So then that caused me to think, okay, so Roy and Nick are in well with the commission, and they're keeping people out from running for the most part. How did Lee come from Alabama and run in Nashville without a license? So that tells me that he's still connected to the Nashville office and must be running under their license. He's running against them under their license.
Under their license. Holy cow.
Must have, because otherwise he couldn't have run.
Yeah.
He couldn't have run. But he ran for 6 weeks. And then they
Once
worked
again,
out
the athletic commissions across the country are not tainted.
and somehow or another, the Fargo money, whatever it was, got worked out, and Jack was happy, and Lee went back to Alabama, and it was over. 6-week opposition.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy. But, stuff happens in families.
Yeah.
But I do know that Lee and Nick did not like each other. Lee Fields and Nick Gulas had heat. They were not fond of each other at all.
There were no Christmas dinners or Thanksgiving dinners.
No, and I don't know. I don't know if there was heat with Lee and Uncle Roy, but there was definitely heat between Lee and Nick, and that probably had to do, if I had to guess, probably had to do when Lee was really over in his payoffs.
So.
I mean, his payoffs probably went back to, because most people.
I've never heard of that. A top babyface and a promoter don't get along.
Well,
that's the first time ever that's happened.
Really?
I've heard a lot of those with a top baby face and top heels, and everybody with Nick, about their payoff. I mean, Jack about went out of the wrestling business working for Nick.
Yeah, he was going to quit. Yeah.
Nick Gulas almost cost us a future world champion, by not compensating him correctly.
Yeah. Just taking care of his old totaled out Pontiac. That's all he wanted. just for Wills to get back to Oklahoma.
So Lester Welch gets into promoting, and in March of 1963, Lester buys Kingsport, Tennessee town, and the little Kingsport territory, Kingsport, Bristol, and Johnson City. He buys that from Mickey Barnes in 1963. And the transaction was listed as Barnes selling it to the Mid-South Wrestling office. The Mid-South Wrestling office is in Dyersburg. And that was in November. That was in November of 1964. And then they named Lester president of the office in Dyersburg, Mid-South Wrestling Enterprises.
Yeah, Mickey Barnes seemed to be a valuable player for the Welch dynasty too.
Yeah, I mean, he's an extended family member, like Colonel Herb Langston and Mike Maroney, the guy in Blytheville.
No blood, but just.
And there's your boy Lester Welch. I'd hate to be a knee pad salesman back in the day. These tough old bastards didn't ever wear them.
So he stays there for.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, the Briscoes don't have any damn knee pads.
Briscoes have knee pads. And so about February of 1966, Lester starts working shots in Florida for Cowboy Luttrell and Eddie Graham. And then in March of 66, he moves on down to Florida, gets out of the Tri-Cities.
That's when he sells his partnership to to Buddy in Atlanta, right? Or who did he sell his partnership?
Well, after Lester got down to Florida, him and Buddy they swapped.
They swapped. They just
So
swapped.
when Buddy couldn't
They
get
swapped
along,
farms. They swapped everything, right? That's so
right?
strange, John. They swapped their farms and everything.
Yeah, and we covered that really, really
Yeah.
extensively in the Jim Barnett series,
Right.
if anybody's interested. But yeah, Buddy and Lester, they swapped ownership. Lester went to Georgia and Buddy went down to Florida. But in this time period here of 1966, this is probably the biggest that the Welch Gulas territory ever was.
This was their peak.
Probably because they had everything we listed earlier with Louisiana, Alabama, all of that stuff we talked about. Plus, Buddy owns half of Georgia, and Lester owns a lot of points in Florida. So the Welch is this guy. If you're a family member of the Welches, you own a lot of the wrestling business. But by the way, August 11th, 1966, in the Jacksonville Coliseum, it's the first time in 20 years there's been a Florida heavyweight champion, and it's Lester Welch. He wins the Cadillac tournament for the Florida.
Once again, the old Cadillac.
He wins the Cadillac tournament for the Florida heavyweight championship. And guess who his opponent was in the finals? Sputnik Monroe.
Oh,
Tremendous.
Sputnik Monroe and Lester Welch. And what I heard was Sputnik bloodied Lester so bad. He was at the end of that match, he was bleeding from the head all the way down to his knees. And he told Sputnik to break his ankle. And Lester said, okay, just break my ankle. And Sputnik goes, oh, no. It's the same deal with Billy Wicks. They wanted him to break
With
Billy
the
Wicks'
arm.
arm. Yeah, and Sputnik, he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't break Lester's ankle. But Lester went over, won the Florida title. There hadn't been a Florida champion since 1946. So
that blew my mind when I read that.
Yeah, and so Lester was the first one in 20 years in Florida. So another milestone for the Welch family. You worked with Lester, didn't you, Jerry?
I'm not sure if I worked with him. I know I worked in his car and some of his cars in the Bahamas and other spots.
Yeah. He didn't go to Georgia till 72 or 73.
He had an issue getting money out of the Bahamas sometimes.
Yeah, that government's hard over there.
Well, Welches and money and territories and towns.
And misdirection plays.
Yeah, that's right. So
did you offer to accompany him one time, Jerry, and he said, no, I'll be fine?
Yeah, Jack and I both did, and Bob Roop, I think Bob Roop also mentioned that one that he offered to walk and Lester to the we had the casinos doing the money swap at the time because the banks were closed, of course, on Saturday night, Sunday night. So the casinos, we had a certain casino there that they did the money swap for us. So that in between the casino and the airport's where he got it.
And the problem, what happens for those of the people that are listening that don't know the story was apparently Lester got rolled a few times consistently.
More than once.
Every time he went to the Bahamas.
And the house was big.
Yeah, it didn't have the money from the show somehow.
Yeah, it's like about every 6 months, the Sheik's son, Captain George, it would come in and say they robbed the box office. People busted in box office and all the money's gone. We don't know what happened.
Yeah.
So one of the more interesting stories, I mean, this is really something here. In 1960, their biggest heel, Tor Yamato. He was a big-time Japanese heel, probably the first one in the Tennessee territory. We're talking about only 15 years after World War II. So Japanese heels and German heels were very, very over. And we're going to talk about a tag team here that fits that too. But he started wrestling for Nick and Roy in September of 1956. And he was married to a lady. There he is, Tor Yamato.
Tojo.
That's Tojo.
Oh, it's Tojo. I thought you had Tojo Yamato.
No, Tor Yamato. He was before Tojo.
Thank you for correcting me. That way, Les Thornton doesn't have to do it.
Tojo Yamamoto.
He will too. Les do that. That's all Les lives for nowadays.
So, and this is something that Jim Cornette said on my Twitter the other day about Tojo Yamamoto got his name because Tor Yamato was so over. So he was P.Y. Chung and some of those kind of names in the Carolinas.
Good restaurant.
Yeah, P.Y. Chung and some of those names in the Carolinas. And when he came to Tennessee, Tor Yamato was so over that they named him Tojo Yamamoto. So here's what happened to Tor Yamato. He was married to a lady named Toddy Fong, and she was in the wrestling show on television. She was his servant girl. So this Japanese heel comes out with the geisha girl, and somehow or another they were not getting along. So October the 28th of 1960, Tor Yamato divorced her. He filed for and got a divorce in the Davidson County, which is the Nashville County, under his real name, Toriaka Ueda. And she didn't even know about it. She didn't even know he got a divorce.
She didn't know his real name.
Right. Because.
Do I have it right now?
Yep, that's Tor Yamato.
Yeah.
And so there was a letter that notified her of the divorce, but it got returned undelivered by the mail service. So December 8th, 1960, after a wrestling show, he comes home. They lived in Murfreesboro, just outside Nashville, and they get into a big fight. And it's about 2 o'clock in the morning.
But they're divorced.
She doesn't know that. She doesn't know. She doesn't know she's divorced from the guy. He didn't tell her. He went to the court. No, he went to the courthouse. He went to the courthouse in late October and filed for the divorce and got the divorce, and she never knew about it.
But he's kept living with her?
Kept living with her. Kept living with her.
It's cheaper.
So on this December 8th night after the wrestling matches, he comes home to their house.
That's this man here. This is a great story.
That's Tor. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And so they get into a big fight about 2 o'clock in the morning, and the 32 caliber pistol goes off. The 32 caliber pistol shoots Yamato in the abdomen, and it pierced his liver and his pancreas, and he died. They rushed him to the hospital, and he told the authorities he accidentally shot himself.
Saving his divorced wife.
Now, his condition's getting bad over the next 2 days, and he was thinking he's dying. And he tells them, she accidentally shot me with the gun. And then he died on December 11th. He was 43 years old. And then when his wife gets to the hospital to claim his body, they tell her she can't have it because she's divorced from him. And she didn't know she
knew about it?
That's when she found out she was divorced.
So she killed him and still didn't know she wasn't married.
That's right. Didn't know she was divorced. She thought she was married to the guy.
This is Dr. Jerry Graham level shit right here.
Yeah,
this is good stuff.
So she gets to the hospital to claim his body to do the ancient Japanese tradition or
that's
whatever.
My husband.
Yeah, that's my husband. And they're like, no, you're divorced. You're his ex-wife, not his wife.
And that's the first she heard about it.
That's the first she heard about it. So she has to go to court to file a motion to overturn the divorce, saying it wasn't valid because Tor Yamato married her as Tor Yamato, but divorced her under his real name.
Did it work?
Yes.
What kind of Tennessee judge agreed with that?
So, despite all of this, including
a Welch,
despite all this,
Judge Welch. That's right, Judge Welch. It's Hester Welch.
The secret divorce, the changing story about what happened, and the domestic violence, she was never arrested or charged.
Wow.
And
so she got off with murder.
Yep.
So she kills somebody that thinks it's her husband. She gets to the hospital and realizes they aren't married. So she just killed a person that she was not married to. But because that person had wrestled under a certain name and she thought she married that wrestler, she doesn't get charged with murder.
Yes.
Does she get the body?
Yes.
Yeah, she got the body.
She got the body.
Killed him and got the body?
She went to court and got it overturned.
Was she dumping in the Mississippi River?
Well, we don't know. She moved to the West Coast. She moved to the West Coast and married somebody else.
What happened to the body?
We don't know.
Not buried anywhere. We don't have records of
We don't
burial
know.
anywhere.
But now this is a lot of people are going to hear this, and they're going to think this is distasteful. But on television,
Not on this show.
so they went on television, and the heels started bragging about being the ones who maybe possibly killed the guy.
I can hear Layfield doing that.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I do
they're
that in
like,
a heartbeat.
well, we don't know exactly what happened to Tori Yamato. Maybe we do. Maybe we do. Where were you?
Damn.
Where were you?
Damn.
Where were you the other? Where were you the other night? I didn't see you around that time at 2 a.m. Well, I was so. I think you might have been the guy that did it.
Yeah.
But he was the
They're,
hottest.
they're all taking credit for it. I love it.
Yeah, he's the hottest.
Only in
heel.
wrestling.
So that's how Tojo Yamamoto got created. So when he came in as a Japanese character, they named him something similar, and he was just as hot during the 60s.
What a great story. So Tori Yamamoto
Tori
was a
Yamato.
hell of a heel. He's a good-looking guy. I mean, with a great body, he got a great look.
Yeah.
And then he gets killed. Nobody can find his body. His wife is not his wife who shot him. She gets him and goes to California and marries somebody else. And
it's never seen again. Yep, that's what happened.
the Welches are to blame for this, aren't they?
Well, it happened under their whatever.
It was
They're
Judge
watching.
Hester Welch that did this.
Or Frankie Fields or Freddie Fuller, or I don't know, somebody.
So you just bring in another Japanese guy because Tennessee people don't know the difference. Apparently, that's what they're thinking.
And they're Hawaiians on top of it.
Yeah, they're not even Japanese people.
That's right. They're from the Kona coast.
Yeah. From
Absolutely.
Canada. One of them from Canadian, wasn't it?
I love wrestling, man. I love it.
And this is why right there, these
Yeah.
stories.
I love wrestling. This is awesome. It could only happen in wrestling. So Tojo comes in. He's the hottest heel in the territory. And so somehow or another, he and Jerry Jarrett start hanging out together. And Jerry's running spot shows. And Jerry is refereeing matches. And so they get to ride together because Jerry's not in the business as a wrestler. So it's not against the rules for him to ride with Tojo.
He has a promoter's license, not a wrestling license.
Yep. And Tojo starts saying, man, Jerry, you play force. Let's see if I can do it like Tojo. You play force sport in high school and you not work in business? And Jerry's like, well, everybody always says I'm too small. And Tojo goes, you're 4 inches taller than I am. And so they're riding
And
along.
there is the young babyface Jerry Jarrett right there.
Yeah. So they're riding along. I see if I can find an even younger picture of Jerry to even make this story even more effective. But they're riding along, and Tojo grabs Jerry by the earlobe and twists it. He goes, that hurt? And Jerry goes, yeah. He goes, show it hurt. Show it hurt. And Jerry has to make facials, to Tojo twisting his ear. He goes, look in mirror. See your face. See yourself. Does that hurt? You have to express it. That get hurt. And so Tojo is teaching him in the car, like how to sell, how to sell, how to
Old
sell
school.
paint,
I love it. Old school.
how to sell paint, how to do that. So Jerry and Tojo go in the office to Nick, Roy, and Christine, and to make the pitch that Jerry should get in the wrestling business as a worker, not as a referee or a promoter. And Christine is absolutely positively against it. And she gives 4 reasons why she don't want Jerry in the wrestling business as a wrestler. Number 1, you're too small. Yeah, I know you're 4 inches taller than Tojo, but he outweighs you by 150 pounds. So you're taller than him, but you're not bigger than him. Number 2, just because you beat up all the boys in high school growing up, don't make you tough. These guys in this business will kill you. Number 3, I make enemies around here because I'm in the management team and I have to make tough decisions that the guys don't like, and I can't be worrying about them taking it out on you and getting back at me, which I can see that's a pretty valid thing.
That's valid. That's
And
a
number
valid
4,
point.
because you've been working here in the office and you've been running towns, they're going to consider you a threat to their livelihood because they're going to see you getting in the business and you're going to be taking money away from them and they're going to beat your butt for it. And
The
I,
most truthful one of the four, right
yeah,
there.
I can't see it. So finally, they make a pitch. Tojo make a pitch. Roy makes a pitch. Nick makes a pitch. They all want Jerry as a wrestler. And Roy tells her, he goes, Christine, I will not book him unless you say it's okay, no matter how much sense I think it makes. Because he's been driving Roy to towns too, right? He's been driving Roy to Memphis, and Roy's been riding with him. They've been having conversations. Jerry's liking this idea of being a wrestler, so he kind of talks Roy into it. But Roy tells Christine, I'm not going to do it unless you say it's okay. So she tells Jerry, she goes, fine. I want you to call this guy named Sailor Moran. And I wanted you to tell him that you want to be trained and broken into the business. And Nick and Roy and Tojo's head dropped to the floor. Like this, he
They
not going.
know.
Yeah, this.
One of the only picture I could find of Sailor Moran.
Yeah, and that was in his younger days. I mean, in 1965 or 66 or whatever this was. I mean, he was older and more haggard and a rough, tough customer.
And apparently a
I'm gonna
very
wonder
a
why
mean old man.
Roy or Herb or one of those tough Welches didn't jump in and train him.
I guess they just thought this has got to be Christine's idea, and if it works, it works, and if it don't, it don't. But let her do it on her terms, and she picked Sailor Moran, and so they know this dude is tough. He's old.
Now, how did she know Sailor? Was Sailor?
Well, he
Sailor
he worked there. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Sailor Moran goes back to the West Texas days. He broke in with Dutch Mantell with Roy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Him and the Green Shadow, Pat Malone, and Charlie Carr, and those guys.
Dutch
There's-
Mantell.
The original, yeah.
Yeah.
The
So
original Dutch.
So Charlie
He's
Carr.
much more handsome. He's much more
yeah.
handsome than the current one. Yeah.
And
Much more handsome than the current Dutch Mantell.
And we've talked about all those guys on the previous episodes. Charlie Carr, Pat Malone, they all.
Sailor Moran, we didn't touch on. Let's really dive into Sailor.
Yeah, Sailor Moran was a tough bird that got trained by Dutch Mantell. So he had an old cinder parking lot at his business. And he took Jerry out to that cinder parking lot and shot on him every.
Now, anybody don't know what cinder is? Those are like volcanic chips off of volcanic rock almost. If you can't walk on them barefoot, and I can't imagine taking a bump on cinder track.
And they did it because it was cheaper because gravel washes away and things like that. But you got a cinder driveway or a cinder parking lot, it lasts forever because those things are so tough and rough.
What you see out in Arizona a lot in the yards, cinder yards.
And so he slammed Jerry on those cinders and put his face in the cinders and put him in shoot holes. And just like we talked about with David Schultz and Herb Welch. Yeah. I mean, he was beat from pillar to post. He came home bloody, bruised, and battered. Christine would say, you sure?
And how old was it, son? I'm sorry, how old was it?
Let's see. He would have been about in his early 20s. Or Sailor, how old was Sailor?
No, Jerry.
Jerry would have been 22 or 23, something like that.
And Sailor in the 50s or what?
Probably almost 70.
Wow.
Maybe. Let's see, Roy. Well, he would have been in his 60s. He would have been 60s.
So Sailor was just brought in to run him off.
That's what her plan was. Is Sailor was going to, dissuade him from doing it because, guys got broke in by Sailor before. He was like Pat Malone. He was a guy that broke guys in, and he wrestled a lot in Kingsport and Johnson City and over there in that part of Tennessee. But he lived there in Nashville, and he said, she said, if you can get Sailor Moran's blessing, you can wrestle in the business. So he hung in there and got the crap beat out of him day after day after day for months. And finally, Sailor Moran said, okay, I think you're tough enough and you know what you can do. And the main thing was, just like Herb, when Herb Welch broke David Schultz in, he shot on him so much, David thought that's how you worked in the business. So when the guys came in to work with him, Herb would bring veterans in the ring to work with him. David about killed them. And they're like, we aren't coming in and work with that guy anymore. He hurts us. He kills us. And Herb goes, hey, David, that stuff that I taught you, that ain't working. That's shooting. And he goes, I taught you that so you could defend yourself because there are going to be guys that you're going to wrestle that are going to test you. and they're going to want to put you in your place, and they're going to, double cross you. And I just want you to be able to handle yourself. Here, let me show you how to work. So he started teaching him how to work. And so Salem Moran did that to Jerry Jarrett. He taught him shooting, which is going to come into play in a story. We're going to have an episode coming up about Jerry.
I never knew this about Jerry until I saw your notes. I got so much more. I've always gotten along very well with Mr. Jarrett. I don't know him well, but I knew him. I knew him more than an acquaintance. Before he passed away, he always spoke to me. He was so very, very nice. But I never knew this background because that's not his reputation.
Right.
It's not that his reputation was soft or anything else. It's just it wasn't as a.
Well, he's a good-looking fella.
A promoter was his reputation.
That's right. To find out that he was trained by this brutal shooter who his mother put on him to run him out of the business is pretty freaking impressive.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, and so that's how Jerry learned how to be in the business, was from Salem Moran, and he survived the break-in period, and so he got a blessing. And Salem Moran called Christine on the phone and said, He, if any of those things happen that you're worried about with the wrestlers getting back at him or trying to get back at you or whatever, Jerry can handle himself now. So she said, okay, well, let you go.
That's something completely unexpected. I did not expect that. It's pretty cool though.
Yeah. So Jerry's getting in the business, and he's been riding to Memphis with driving Roy to the towns and all that. So their relationship is getting stronger. Between Jerry and Jerry would, I don't know that Jerry ever said it publicly, but I know he said it to me on more than one occasion that he owed his whole career to Roy Welch. So he said I wouldn't even be anywhere around wrestling or in wrestling if it weren't.
But can you imagine though, for a person that wants to get in the business, riding with Roy Welch? I mean, that is something that's a Harvard education in sports entertainment or wrestling, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that is something.
Entrepreneurship,
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, you're riding with
because
one of the
Jerry,
great businessmen of the last century. You're driving him, and you got alone time with him. He doesn't have a cell phone to be calling people back in the 50s and 60s in the car. He's going to be sitting there talking to you.
And you can say a lot of things about Jerry Jarrett, but listen, he was a damn good businessman. I mean, he not only did he make money in wrestling, but he made money in construction. He made money in wrestling.
Everything he touched.
Now, was it chicken salad that he had the recipe?
He has a recipe that's in Betty Crocker's recipe book.
That Bruce gives him so much hard time about.
That's the one Mr. Pritchard picks on. Yep.
Yeah.
We had him on a podcast. I said, before we let you go, I said, can you share your chicken salad? And he went into it.
Oh yeah, he did. He shared the whole thing. He was a great guest.
Yeah, I had a lot of great conversations with Jerry, and it really affected me when he passed away because I really thought a lot of him, and we had a relationship because when I first contacted him, I told him I don't really want to talk to you about wrestling. And that don't happen very often. He goes, really? You don't? And I said, no, I want to talk to you about your other businesses. I want to talk to you about your business philosophy. And man, was that a gold conversation.
Wow. I bet. Mean, Did you hear about him missing his Christine's induction in Vegas?
He took a nap.
Yeah. He thought it was a different night. But the best part was watching Jeff panic because that's his dad. He's worried something has happened to his dad, obviously, and as any of us with older parents, we were worried about that. And then all of a sudden he realized he just slept in.
I know, and I'm not going to get this exactly right. That's not the figure for sure. But I know that at some point, as Memphis was going along there at the end, or what people call Memphis Wrestling, his promotion, he said something to the effect of, I'll just throw a number out. I've got $100,000 in the wrestling account, and if that ever goes down, I'm out of the wrestling business. I'm not going to use my other business to fund wrestling. I mean, that's how good of a businessman he was.
Wow.
I've got this for this, and it either is going to make it or it's not going to make it, but I'm going to do it one way or the other. If it makes it, great. If it don't make it, I'm going to go on and do something else. I mean, he was good about that.
Yeah.
Really good. I mean, when TNA got to a certain point, he was like, I'm out. I'm out. So one of the things I want to talk about today is I want to talk about the television announcers that they had, because they had some of the best television announcers of the territory era. And of course, everybody knows Lance Russell and Dave Brown. Lance Russell was from Jackson, Tennessee. He was doing sports, basketball, boxing, football, and baseball. He was hired. Yep, there's Lance and Dave. And so that first run of Sputnik and Billy Wicks, Lance was not the television announcer for that, because Lance was over at WHBQ, and they were on the station that everybody knows them for, Channel 5. But Channel 5 canceled the Welch wrestling show after that really hot run from Monroe and Wicks, and started running the syndicated Texas wrestling show. And so Gulas Welch and Buddy Fuller went over to WHBQ Channel 13, where Lance was. And so Lance became the announcer of the wrestling show, which he would do for the next 18 years or so. And just, I mean, he's always one of the guys that people bring up when they talk about Grace wrestling. It's either Gordon or Lance, that. And then in these later years, as Bob Cottle got older, and we just lost him not long ago, Bob started kind of getting in that conversation.
And rightfully so, too.
Yeah, I mean, so it's always that. And it's mainly because, and a lot of these guys I'm going to talk about here, a lot of people never saw them, because by the time the video era came in, those guys weren't around, and they weren't they were part of Nick's territory, but they weren't part of Jerry Jarrett's territory, so people never really saw them like they got to see Lance and Dave. One of those guys, and I get heat for this sometimes, but actually my favorite announcer in the Tennessee territory was Sterling Brewer. And Sterling Brewer was the Birmingham television person. And he was a World War II veteran, and he was community involved. He worked at WAPI Radio and WBMG television there in Birmingham. He was the host for their show, which was called Live Studio Wrestling. And a lot of people don't know this, but when they had the Atlanta, I mentioned this on the Jim Barnett series, but when they had the Atlanta Wrestling War and Ann Gunkel and all those wrestlers walked out, their announcer walked out with them. And so for the National Wrestling Alliance office that the Buddy Fuller and Ray Gunkel owned, they brought Sterling Brewer in to do the WTCG, which would be WTBS. They brought Sterling Brewer in from Birmingham to do the show before they hired Gordon Soley. Sterling Brewer's just fantastic. I mean,
so Gordon replaced Sterling.
Gordon, well, and they had Les Thornton, Les Thatcher in there for a little. They had him in there for a little while, but then they went with Gordon once they got that deal worked out. But Sterling Brewer was there for a while. His play-by-play is just phenomenal. And there's not that many matches out there that you can hear him on, but there are a few on YouTube that have Sterling Brewer calling the match. And
now, is this Sterling here?
That's Sterling holding the microphone, and that's
right.
Don Green that he's interviewing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Sterling on the left in the suit and the tie.
Yep.
I mean, his voice is deep and resonant, and his play-by. Here's another thing a lot of people don't realize about the Memphis television show is that Lance is always talked about as the lead guy, and Dave Brown is the sidekick. But if you watch closely, when the wrestling starts, Lance goes out, lays out, and Dave Brown calls the match. Dave Brown is actually the play-by-play guy, and Lance is the color guy. Lance is adding in the little comments, and Lance does the interviews for the wrestlers, but Dave Brown calls the matches. And he does a great job. The weatherman is calling the match, right?
Right.
And he goes, and so he brings Dave Brown in 1966, and Dave slowly but surely evolves into becoming the play-by-play guy, and Lance is more of the storyteller and the interviewer and the color guy. You know, Dave would be calling a match like, well, Lawler takes him over with a headlock, and Lance would be like, he's one tough son of a gun. You know, he's just doing the little color
one-liners.
And
that's where Jerry Lawler got his snitch from.
That's Harry Thornton.
Harry
Harry
Thornton.
Thornton.
Got the
Yep,
wrong one.
Harry. Yep, well, that's okay.
I
We're
put
going
that
to
up
talk
for
about.
Les Thornton.
Yep, that's Harry Thornton interviewing Tojo Yamamoto. Harry Thornton was the announcer for Chattanooga.
Yep, there he is.
Yep, and he's interviewing Jackie
With Ray
Fargo there.
Stevens.
Or Ray Stevens.
Is that Jackie or Ray? They look so much alike in those old
Well, I'll
photos.
show you again.
I think that's Jackie Fargo.
That's Fargo. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not Ray. That's Fargo.
So Harry Thornton was a personality in Chattanooga on television every morning. And so when they've got the television show in Chattanooga, they got Harry Thornton to be the announcer for the wrestling show. They're seeing him every day. He's like Gil Green in Nashville and Lance Russell. Dave Brown's the weatherman every day in Memphis. Harry Thornton's got an interview show there in Chattanooga. And Harry Thornton buys in a third of the Birmingham town.
Mm.
So you got your announcer is the promoter. So he wants to sell tickets, right?
Right.
And a lot of people crack on Harry Thornton's commentary and the way that he gets into fights with the heels and, puts Tojo Yamamoto in his place. And there's great video of when Jerry Lawler was a heel in his early years. The exchanges between him and Harry Thornton were just gold. But I've got a great picture of Harry Thornton throwing a drunk guy out of the wrestling matches in Chattanooga. Like they said, "Hey, Harry, there's a guy down here at ringside and he's drunk," Then Harry goes, "I'll take care of it." And he comes down and takes the guy and throws him out of the building. But Harry Thornton is a legend in Chattanooga. One other thing I mentioned about Birmingham, as far as partnerships in the town, there was a guy in Alabama named Joe Denneberg. And Joe Denneberg was a World War I veteran, and he was a former Alabama athletic commissioner. And so when he resigned of his athletic commissioner role there, he bought in to 1/3 of the Birmingham town. And he also owned a jewelry store there. And guess who became the #1 sponsor of the television show? The jeweler, right? So Joe Denneberg's Jewelers became actually it was Levy's Fine Jewelry there in Birmingham. And when he passed away in 1972, they continued on with his wife and his son. And there are a lot of ads where Gulas, Welch, and Mrs. Joe Denneberg present wrestling in Birmingham. But they were so good at getting people who were tied into the local community in the business, and giving them an interest in the business or letting them buy in so that they made sure they were successful in that town. And Harry Thornton was in Chattanooga, and Joe Denneberg in Birmingham, and Sterling Brewer was the guy. Knoxville wasn't owned by them, but they sent talent there. And if you were just watching the show, it had Gulas, Welch. There were some East Tennessee guys on there. Of course, that was promoted by the Kazanas, but their host was Rex Rainey. And there's not hardly any footage out there. There's some photos of Rex Rainey on WBIR Channel 10, but he was a real institution in Knoxville. Huntsville, Alabama, they got a guy named Grady Reeves. And Grady Reeves had a morning show for 28 years. He was on every single morning on that television show, and he was the host of the wrestling show, and he was a partner in Huntsville, Alabama. So he was the promoter there at the Madison County Coliseum. So they did such a great job of incorporating in these guys who were tied in so strong in the local community, and they were promoting the Gulas Welch promotion name, and they were making sure that people came out to the wrestling matches because they were going out on location to all these places, and people were like, "Oh, you're from the wrestling," and so it's just really promotionally, really, really, really,
Yeah,
really smart.
grassroots type promotions, what they did. They were the best at it.
Right. Really, 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 really smart. So we talked about Buddy getting in trouble with the athletic commission and getting his license revoked. John Regas comes into Memphis. Memphis is on fire. Some of the tag teams of the 1960s. Don and Bobby Fields, Tex Riley and Lynn Rossi. They were a big babyface team. We're going to talk about Lynn Rossi a lot in the next episode. Jackie Fargo and Lester Welch. So the way that Jackie Fargo got turned babyface was Jackie Fargo and Louis Tilley. He was wrestling as Fargo, and they got into a match with Don and Al Green, and they were getting beaten down, and they got a save from Lester Welch. Lester saved Jackie Fargo from the Don and Al Green, and it turned Jackie babyface. And so they had a big-time babyface tag team in the 60s. And then, of course, Jackie and Roughhouse Fargo, Lynn Rossi and Jackie Fargo, the two biggest babyfaces in Tennessee in the 1960s, and they absolutely, positively could not stand each other outside the ring.
Really?
For a shoot, yeah. But they did work together because it was, good business.
Money, yeah.
Now, Tony, I got this saved as one of the tag teams, but I don't have the name on it.
Boy, you might have stumped the chump. I'm not sure.
Uh-oh.
I don't know either.
Not Don and Al Green, is it?
Well, it could be, but I can't tell. I'm not used to this. No, they got Fargo. Is that Fargo armbands? That's the Daltons, maybe?
Dalton, Frank and Jack.
Is that
Dalton,
Don? Yeah, Frank and Jack Dalton, I think.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Let me look.
So some of the big heel teams, while you're looking for that, the big heel teams, Tojo Yamamoto and Alex Perez were a big heel team. The Corsica brothers, we talked about them last episode. Doc and Mike Gallagher, who I want to talk about in our next episode.
They were legends in the Carolina wrestling.
There's going to be a guy who's going to debut in the Tennessee territory as a Gallagher, who everybody knows that we'll talk about in the next episode, but he's going to come in as a Gallagher. To the tie back to Don and Mike Gallagher as being really tough tag team. One of the iterations of the Von Brauners were the Von Stroheims. It's Carl and Skull Von Stroheim. The masked teams were huge. The Mysterious Medics were the first big masked team in Tennessee.
Tony, is it correct? I mean, the masked tag team seemed like that was a Tennessee thing more than anybody else. And
that's the Medics right there.
Kind of spread out there.
Yeah. Is that the interns?
That's the interns.
That's Ken Ramey, who's Dr. Ken Ramey, yeah.
Yeah, that's
who's a great story too, by the way.
Yeah, that's the interns. Yeah. Dr. Ken Ramey and the interns, Don Carson and the Red Shadow, of course, from Cleveland, Tennessee, Don Carson and Dick Dunn. There was another team after J.C. Dykes and the Infernos called the Blue Infernos that were huge. But those mass tag teams, I mean, I've always heard Nick always had countless outfits and masks in his office. And there might be 3 different versions of the Medics in 3 different towns that night, different guys under the mask. But the Medics were so big.
Later on, it was like the assassin number 1, assassin number 2, assassin number 3, or just go down the line.
That's what I've always been told about why there's no masked guys anymore, because Vince couldn't keep people from copying it.
Right.
That if you really pushed a masked guy, there could be a guy show up in some town and say that's that guy, and it's not really the guy.
Well, masked guys were actually outlawed in the state of New York for
a while. Yeah, sure were. But the biggest heel tag team of the 60s, without a doubt, and I got to see these guys when I was just a kid, Saul Weingroff and the Von Brauners.
Yeah.
They were hot and they were huge. Oh, my gosh. And I've always heard that Nick got a fee off of their bookings where they appeared anywhere in the United States.
Where did Saul? What's a little bit of Saul Weingroff's history?
We're going to go into him a lot deeper next episode.
Okay,
but
good. We'll
save that. He got
I got everything else wrong. That's the Von Brauners, right?
That's Saul and the Von Brauners.
Okay.
Yeah. They were like, when I was a kid, they were like seeing the Road Warriors.
Yeah.
I mean, just devastating. Like, who in the world could possibly beat these guys? Except they could wrestle more than the Road Warriors. I mean, they worked holds and things of that nature, and they looked so much alike. They were always doing the switching gimmick behind the referee's back, and different guy in the ring, and all those things. And Saul was always hitting people with a cane. Now, another thing to mention here that a lot of people, if you didn't grow up with this old time wrestling, and you don't really even see it on videotape very much, but back in these days, managers had to sit in a chair at ringside, and it was illegal for them to get out of a chair. So obviously, when one Von Bronner had the referee back in the corner and Saul was out of his chair, that was heat, you know, and he was going to bash the guy with his cane, you know,
So the
behind.
manager had to sit in a chair the entire match?
Yeah. Yep. There was a chair at ringside, and you had to sit in that chair if you were a manager. In the WWF, you couldn't even stay at ringside.
Right.
In the WWF, you know, when everybody got a manager, they either got Blassie or they got the Grand Wizard or whoever, they would come out with their guy, then they would go back to the locker room. They weren't even allowed to stay at ringside during the match.
Was having a manager, was that a Southern thing, and other people kind of picked it up
Well,
later?
it added with the Von Brauners, they were supposed Germans, and they spoke in the German broken accent, right? So when they talked, it was very limited, and they said very short sentences, which added. But the managers with the mask guys didn't talk, which even added more, you know, mysterious heat to their gimmick. So I think in that way, managers were pretty awesome, because if a guy could talk, that was one thing. But if a guy couldn't talk, that was the manager's role. You know, he was there to get them over and be the mouthpiece, be the stick man.
Yeah.
Now the Von Brauners got in trouble with the Athletic Commission too. The Athletic Commission was very stringent and strict on you not if you didn't make your booking. So if you didn't show to a town that you were booked on, you got fined by the commission. So the Von Brauners, here's what happened. The Von Brauners were so over and had so much heat that they were in danger every time they went to a ring. So if they went to a town and a guy was promoting the town didn't have adequate security, they weren't going to work. Because they're like, hey, we could go out there and get stabbed or killed or shot or whatever. You got no protection for us. We not working. Well, the commission counted that as a no-show for a booking.
Wow.
And they got in trouble, and their license got revoked. And they worked it out finally, but they built up quite a thing of.
And they really had that archaic rules back in there. If one state commission outlawed you, you were disqualified.
They communicated with other. Yeah. Well, the National Wrestling Association was still around, which was the association for the commissions. So they would talk with each other, and, you know, people were talking about the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, blackballing guys. It was going on a lot more with the National Wrestling Association because the commission were suspending guys and calling other state commissions saying, this guy's not supposed to be working. We would appreciate it if you uphold this suspension in your state. So they were doing a lot more of that stuff than the Alliance. By the way, 1961, this is, you know, they're making all that money we talked about with the commission fees and all that, but this is the year Roy gets named vice president of the National Wrestling Alliance. So Roy is the number 2 guy in the alliance as far as officers are concerned.
Sam president at the time.
He this is one of those times where he's taking a break.
He stepped aside.
So in 1961, Fred Kohler was the president, and then he resigned because he got mad about something. And Doc Sarpolis was the president from Amarillo. And so he was the president of the National Wrestling Alliance from 61 to 63. And then Sam came back in 63. But it's kind of cool. Roy was Sarpolis's vice president.
What kind of influence did Roy have? Was he a pretty influential guy, I guess?
Well, he was the biggest talent booker in the country. I know he probably.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
But guess what? We talk about them having these political connections and about how local is so important. And just to show you how Roy thought, Sam Mushnick had booked a meeting for him and Nick to come to St. Louis to meet with Sam. And they told him, we can't come because we're going to the governor inauguration in Tennessee and Alabama that same day. And and that's more important than coming to meet with you, Mr. Mushnick. They always did that. there was the national wrestling business, and then there was their business, and they always made their business the priority. So if a governor was being inaugurated and they were pals with that guy, and that guy was helping them in that state, they were going to go to that instead of
Where are
going
you
to the.
going to go? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, Mr. Mushnick, we'll have to come meet with you another day.
Yeah.
And that really was true. The Tennessee inauguration was for the governor was a day, and the same day was the Alabama governor was being inaugurated, and they went to both of them.
They went to both. Wow, that power.
They went to both of them and didn't go to the alliance meeting. So, I mean, that's how politically connected they were in those days, which was smart. I mean,
Very smart.
that's your business. You got to work that power base, to get done what you need to get done, or
And
whatever.
that was part of Eddie Graham's business model. I mean, he was awarded flags to flying over Tallahassee and all that stuff, because of his contributions.
Yeah.
The
We're gonna
NWA
say
was
Trump.
not going to survive national television, was it?
They weren't going to survive themselves.
That's a better way to put it, yeah.
Well, I've written about this a lot, and we talked about it in the Barnett thing. But when Sam resigned in 1975, all wrestling changes on the fives. So in 1975, when Sam resigned, and then Jack lost the title, that was Sam's last hand-picked champion. From there on, it started crumbling. And it was only 5 years from then you had like 6 major offices went out of business: Los Angeles, San Francisco. I've listed them before, but there were several in 1980 that just folded. So 5 years after that, and then 5 years after that, in 1985, it's a totally different game. I mean, there's just about 1985. There's about 7 wrestling promotions. So there's Vince, there's Crockett, there's Florida, there's AWA, there's Dallas, and is that it? Well, Watts,
Kansas City, yeah.
Watts, and Kansas City. Those were the other 2. Yeah, and that's it. And that's
Anything west of there was gone. I mean,
Yep. And Kansas City was
there was
just
nothing in the west at all, right?
and that Nick and well, Crockett and Vince are fighting over Los Angeles
And San Francisco.
because they just got TBS. And
Right.
they ran the Forum in L.A. Crockett did, and drew 10,000 to 11,000 people. I mean, they drew.
I know through Eddie that Mike Graham had a piece of San Francisco for a while, and he was taking all the talent out of Florida, going to San Francisco and bombing, and plus the expenses, and we were bearing the brunt of the expenses because Mike was Mike.
In 1985, Vern was still drawing. He was still drawing 10, 11,000 people. Even if Vince came in to run a show in the AWA territory, Vern still ran. I mean, he still had 6 to 7 figures of attendance in most of his big shows.
And through all that growth and expansion, WWE, Tennessee wrestling was still thriving in Memphis, right?
It was the last one
That
standing.
was the last threshold, yeah.
Last one standing. And then Jerry ended up going to work for him.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, so Don and Al Green were a big heel team. The Von Brauners were a big heel team. Don and Al Green are going to play into big to the next episode we talk about. And we'll just kind of wind down today, unless you guys got other things you want to talk about here. But Roy's mentoring Jerry Jarrett, and that's really going to be a big deal as we go forward because they're riding in the car. Roy's asking Jerry. Jerry has refereed the matches that night, or he's worked in one of the opening, 1 or 2 matches. And Roy would say, what do you think about tonight? How did you think it go? And Jerry told me this story about when he was a referee, and he hadn't really been in the working side of the business. He had just been promoting towns. And so he just is going that night and watching the matches and driving Roy. And Roy's like, well, what'd you think about the matches tonight? And Jerry goes, well, that main event was really good, but though I think there was something funny going on with the one match there. It just didn't seem like they were really hitting each other or something. And so, I mean, Roy had been kayfabing Jerry all that time, And so slowly but surely, Roy start talking to him and tell him about what's going on. and telling him things about the booking and asking him, well, you know, that match didn't draw as well tonight. Like, Jerry, what would you have done different? And Jerry'd tell him, he goes, oh, yeah, well, that's a good idea. And then the next week, Roy would go into the locker room and he'd book Jerry's idea from the card ride, you know. And slowly but surely, the whole card was being booked by Jerry through Roy. Like the boys didn't know it. They thought Roy was booking it, but Jerry was really booking it in the car with Roy, and Roy was doing it, you know, to the boys, and they were drawing. You know, it was working. All of Jerry's ideas were working. And finally, Roy decided that, well, I know you're young, and I know you're a lot younger than a lot of the guys that are working for us or whatever, but I'm going to officially tell them you're going to be in charge of Memphis. So he turned it over to him.
Well, there you have it. Episode 5 in the books, as they say. I don't know that that's the way it works, but 5 times the books. And when we come back, we are about to hit the roaring 70s of the Welch dynasty.
And the explosion of Memphis and Jerry Jarrett moving from the Ellis Auditorium to the Mid-South Coliseum. Nick being skeptical about it, saying we'll never fill that building. It's way too big. You're crazy for doing that. Jerry's just young and enthusiastic and full of confidence that he knows what he's doing. We're going to talk about the expansion of Louisville, and we're going to talk about the expansion of Evansville, Indiana. We're going to talk about Lexington, Kentucky coming in. To Jerry Jarrett is going to bring all these towns in. And the company starts operating as 2 territories, really. There's Nick Goulis's in Nashville, Chattanooga, Birmingham, and then Jerry Jarrett's end is Memphis, Louisville, Evansville, Lexington, and Tupelo, Mississippi. And so Jerry is slowly but surely, they end up giving him 10% of the company or allowing him to work his way into getting 10 points. And then we covered a lot of this in the Jim Barnett series, but Jerry then gets lured to Atlanta to book for Jim Barnett. So he's in Atlanta there for a while to win the wrestling war while he's still booking that side of the Goulis Welch company. And this is about the time, too, in the next episode where Roy starts getting ill and starts getting sick. And then Jerry's able to get some more of Roy's points because Roy's withdrawing a little by little from the wrestling business. So we're going to talk about all of that next time.